Tommy has lived on 4 continents working as a global ambassador and has traveled to more than 60 countries. He has built his career on creating valuable and authentic relationships. Currently, Tommy is the president of Spaulding Companies Corporation, a leadership development, consulting, coaching, training, and speaking organization. Prior to founding his own company, Tommy was named the 5th president and CEO of the renowned international leadership not-for-profit organization Up With People. Tommy has been the business partner for sales manager at IBM Lotus Development and a member of the Japan Exchange and Teaching Program. His first book, It's Just Not Who You Know, was released and published by Random House in August 2010 and has hit #2 on the New York Times, #2 on the Wall Street Journal, and #1 in U.S. Today national bestsellers list. In September 2012, Tommy was named by Meeting and Conventions magazine as one of the best-known keynote speakers in the nation. And so that's a very impressive bio. And before we go ahead and have Tommy begin, we are going to start off with our very first poll question. So the first poll question today is, how do you show others that you truly care about what matters to them? Do you send them a handwritten note? Do you call them frequently? Do you send business referrals to them? Or do you share personal sensitive information with them? I'm going to go ahead and give everybody just a minute to get that answer. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and give you just a few more seconds here. All right. And we will go ahead and share that with the audience. So it looks like about 15% of you do a handwritten note. 47% of you call your clients frequently. 21% of you send business referrals, and 18% of you share personal sensitive information with them. Okay, and if you want to go ahead and move forward to the next slide, Tommy, we're going to go ahead and let you begin.
Okay, thank you, Jessica. So I have to admit, I've done this keynote speaking thing for the past 4 years, but this is my very first webinar. I've never done one before, so I was a little intimidated by the technology, but I think I'm all set. So thank you, Jessica, for all your great work. And good morning from Denver, Colorado. My name is Tommy Spaulding, and it's an honor to be with you this morning. I'm actually feeling the accounting vibe because my good friend is Greg Anton. He's a partner of Anton, Collins & Mitchell, which is an accounting firm here in Denver, Colorado. And we're good friends, so he gives me an office here. So outside my door is 250 CPAs and accountants, so I'm with you in spirit. I grew up in upstate New York. My mom was a public school teacher, and my dad was a public school teacher, and my grandparents was hairdressers, but my other grandmother was a public school teacher, and I have 2 sisters, and one of them became a school teacher, and all my aunts and uncles were school teachers. And I wanted to actually become a school teacher at first, but I really struggled in school academically because I'm dyslexic and basically failed a lot of different classes in high school and really struggled academically in high school. And I used to always joke with my friends when I graduated high school. I watched my friends graduate magna cum laude and summa cum laude, and I graduated high school, thank God almighty, cum laude. Just barely graduated school, and I remember going to my guidance counselor my senior year in high school, and Mr. Tilton. And he wasn't a mean fellow. He just looked at my grades and my GPA and my SAT score, and he just basically said that college isn't for you because of your academic, record and your low reading, ability. And so I instead of going to college, I signed up for an organization called BOCES, which is a trade school in upstate New York, and that's where I was headed when I graduated high school back in 1987. And then amazing how life, throws you curveballs. About a month before I graduated high school, a group called Up With People came to my high school and did a show. And many of you might know, Up With People is this global leadership program. It was really an incredible organization that came to my high school and had this show. And I remember going to the show and seeing the Up With People show for the first time, and just how incredible it was to see 150 people from different countries, black, white, Jewish, Christian, Muslim, all over the world. Communist, socialist, capitalist, rich, poor. It was just incredible seeing a bunch of young people on stage, singing about building relationships and learning about different cultures and traveling around the world and living in host families and serving the world and volunteering. And so after the show, I went up the stage and I introduced myself to some of the cast members and decided I wanted to interview for the cast. And so I went backstage and interviewed. and about a month later I was accepted to join Up With People. So instead of going to BOCES, when I graduated high school, I decided to travel all over the world with Up With People. And that actually 1 year turned into 9 years I was with Up With People, traveling all over the world to over 60 different countries and 50 different states and 3,000 different host families, and it just absolutely changed my heart and my mind about the world and serving others. So much of my message to this webinar is really what I learned, just traveling all over the world Up With People, and the value of building authentic, genuine relationships, and the power of servant relationships, and how you can transform your business. Whether you're a banker, an accountant, or a lawyer, or a doctor, or a teacher, but how can you transform your business by using some of these principles, what I call the 5 floors of relationships. I mentioned that my parents were school teachers. My dad was an English school teacher, and he was my greatest friend and ally and mentor. He knew his son was struggling academically and failing out of school and getting teased a lot in elementary school and junior high. And so I remember for this day, I was a young kid. I was probably in 6th or 7th grade, and my father came to my bed to tuck me in, and he looked at me and he said, "Tommy, I know you struggle academically and you have a hard time reading, but I'm going to give you a book, and I'm going to read this book to you. And I promise you, if you can do the teachings of this book and really live this book and listen to what this author is telling you, it'll change your life." And he gave me a book called Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. And I'm sure many of you on the call have read the book. And if you haven't read the book, it's called How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. The book is over 70 years old. Carnegie's long passed away, but it's still a best-selling book. I think 20 million copies were sold, and it's one of the longest-serving New York Times best-selling books ever. It's still on the best-selling list 70 years later. And it was really a profound book, and my father gave it to me and read it to me a few times, and I read it myself and very slowly, but I soaked in every word. And it basically taught me about networking and how to build relationships. And, Dale Carnegie talks about these 10 different tactics that you can do to win friends and influence people, and look people in the eye and shake people's hand and speak about their interests and not yourself, not always talk about yourself, and write handwritten notes, and avoid conflict. And he talks about these 10 different tactics. And I just lived this book because when you're a young kid in elementary, junior high, and you're failing out of school and your kids are teasing you, and there was a class called the resource room where kids with learning disabilities went, which was me, and my friends would, or my so-called would call that the retard room, and that just broke my heart to be called those names. And so I had this little chip on my shoulder. So I lived this book, Dale Carnegie's book, like no other, and really learned how to win friends and influence people and network and build relationships, and became incredibly popular in school because I had this charismatic personality and would just build relationships with people, and became an Eagle Scout and a senior class president, and very involved in school activities and school plays, and was captain of the ski team, on the football team, the baseball team, and then moved into college where I went to East Carolina University and became student government president, class president, and fraternity president. Really, lived this book much throughout my 20s and 30s, and became a really master networker. But something happened to me about 10 years ago that really humbled me, which is kind of funny, is I got married. And I married a woman named Jill, and she is an incredibly humbling and genuine person. And I was telling her about this book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, how wonderful it was, and how it really shaped my core, who I am, about the power of networking. And she basically challenged me and said, this book is incredibly manipulative. It's like how to win friends and influence people to help you. It's very self-serving. And you become a master networker, but if you really want to change the world and grow your business, you really need to learn how to serve others and give to others. And that was really a foreign concept to me because I spent my whole life trying to network to build my business. And I realized that I had it all wrong. And I became very successful in sales and business, but the relationships I had were kind of shallow. And the customers and clients I had were very transactional. And so I really evaluated myself, and I actually became CEO and president of Up With People, the organization that I was telling you about. And I really learned firsthand the power of servant relationships and the power of building relationships that are deeper than just networking. And in your business, the accounting field, In the old days, you just had a bunch of accountants that did all the busy work in their cubes in their office, and they never really interacted with their clients. They just did the work and submitted the work to their clients, and you had probably business development people or senior partners that were very connected in the community that would bring in business. Well, there's not a law firm in the world that operates that way now. Now every CPA, every accountant, every person in the office is in the community, serving on boards, networking, building relationships with your clients and customers, interfacing with them, being out of the office, and bringing in business. And so the talk I want to do this morning is really how do you transform your business by changing the way you look at customers and you look at clients and you look at relationships, both personal and professional. And I talk about in my book, It's Not Just Who You Know, that I wrote 3 years ago, that we all have personal and professional relationships. And, I call these the 5 floors of relationships. We all have relationships that somewhere live on the 5 different floors of relationships. And the first floor of relationship is incredibly transactional. It's people you meet at the bank or the post office or the taxi driver or people that you're building different relationships with, and it's highly transactional. And much of our business in life is dealing with transactional relationships. But how do you move beyond that and move into second floor relationships? And I call those NSW relationships, where you start having some conversation with these people, and I call it news, sports, weather. You might have small talk, and small talk's important when you build relationships. News, sports, weather, commonalities, and you have small talk. And it's important to build relationships when you're doing some small talk, but the tragedy is that there's a lot of business leaders or people in business that never move beyond that. They never move beyond the NSW, the small talk, and that's where my message really comes in. Is if you want to take your business to the next level, you have to move beyond the personal small talk. And a lot of us grew up in the 60s, 70s, and 80s where we're told not to build personal relationships at work. Work is for business, and then your personal life is your personal life, and there's a big long line between them. But my argument is that if you're working 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 hours a week, when you look at building authentic relationships, there's not a little asterisk next to it and says you can only do that after business hours, 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. That you're supposed to build these types of relationships at work. And so when you move beyond the second floor NSW relationships, you move to what I call third floor relationships. And that's when you start sharing opinions and thoughts, and you start getting to know your customers and clients a little bit better and being a little bit more vulnerable and not being as superficial and not just doing small talk, but you're starting to show some interest. But when you move to a fourth floor relationship, you really start sharing some emotions and feelings, and you're very vulnerable, and you have conversations with them that are beyond the NSW, news, sports, weather, and you share about life, and you get to know them as well, and you share their interests and their passions, and anyone that tells you that marriage is perfect and their job is perfect and their kids are perfect and their life is perfect is probably feeding a bunch of bullshit, because life isn't perfect. And sometimes it's nice to be able to move beyond the small talk and talk about things in life that are not just transactional. And when you move to a penthouse relationship, this is when you build lifelong customers, when you build relationships with people that are really true servant relationships. If you think about in your profession, the customers and clients that you work with, you probably have a handful of them that are
Thank you. Okay. This is a disaster. Tommy, are you back on?
I got cut off, Jessica, but I'm back on now.
All right. Well, we can go ahead and begin where you dropped off.
Okay. Thanks, Jessica. Sorry, folks, I got cut off, but I'm back on. So I was talking about these fifth floor relationships and how you can really transform your business by building these types of relationships. And it's the little things that we do in our relationships. And I'd like to tell you a couple stories about, you know, the little things you can do to kind of change your business up and build these fourth and fifth floor relationships. I did a speech this past year to a company called Stream International, which is kind of an interesting company. They do call centers. So if your phone refrigerator breaks, you don't call GE or Apple or AT&T. Sometimes you call a call center in some country all over the world. And Stream is one of the largest call centers in the world. And the CEO read my book and wanted to hire me to speak to their world conference this past year. But she had two requirements she wanted me to do before I spoke to her team. First, she wanted me to meet her chief operating officer, a guy named Brian Delaney. And they got about 50,000 employees. So Brian's got a big job running this worldwide company. And the second thing they wanted me to do is they wanted me to head down to their closest call center to really understand the call center business. And so the closest call center from Denver, Colorado was El Salvador, which I'd never been before. And so I agreed to spend a day down in El Salvador shadowing a call center manager to understand their business. And so I had this wonderful lunch with Brian Delaney before I went down, the chief operating officer, and really got to know him. And I was, you know, we started off with a small talk, to NSW, where are you from, where I'm from, and so forth. Yeah, I called it. Yeah. And so I had a wonderful lunch, and he did some small talk, and talked about our families and the sports and so forth. But then we really moved beyond and got a little more vulnerable. And vulnerability is incredibly important. And I was sharing with him, Brian, that it's incredibly hard to be on the road 200 cities a year on the speaking circuit and be married with 3 kids and how tough it is. And he was sharing with me as well that it's a tough thing, running a company with 50,000 employees and traveling all over the world and young family at home. So we had a really, authentic lunch. So it wasn't just, a bunch of small talk. That we really opened up a little bit. And it was about an hour lunch, and I never really heard from him again. So I'm flying down to El Salvador about 2 months later to do this call center. And the only time of the year that I had time on my calendar to actually fly down there was right before Christmas, because my schedule was so jammed that I found a few days before the holidays, Christmas holidays, that I could fly down to El Salvador to see this call center. Well, I fly down there, and as soon as I land, I get to the call center. They were so hospitable, but I got a text from my assistant back in Denver saying that there's a huge snowstorm that's coming in Denver, Colorado, and they're canceling all the flights back into Denver. And when I'm coming back from El Salvador through Dallas, that there's a chance that my flight might be canceled, and I'm going to be stuck, in Dallas, Texas for my holidays and miss seeing my wife and my kids. And so I was kind of nervous, that might be happen. So I spent the day at the call center. Next morning I flew back, and I landed in Dallas, and I was racing to get my connection to get home to Denver before the snow started, and they closed the airport in DIA. And when I was running to the airport, I got this text or this email from Brian Delaney. this is the guy that's the chief operating officer of this huge company, Stream, that's got 50,000 employees and a very busy man. And he sends me this email, and basically the email says, hey, Tommy, I know you were down in El Salvador at our Coral Center this past couple of days, and I know you live in Denver, and I was looking at the weather patterns and saw that there's a huge storm coming into Denver, and there might be a closure of the airport, and it's Christmas holidays, and I know you want to try to get back to your family, and I know how much family means to you. We talked about it during lunch, so I had my admin track your flight, and it turns out your American Airlines flight is canceled from Dallas back to Denver. And so we took the liberty to book you on the United flight. You got to go to a certain gate, and right when you land. So I ran over to the United gate, and I got onto this flight, and I realized when I landed in Denver that that was the last flight that landed before they actually closed the airport and canceled all the flights, and I would have missed the holidays. And I share that story because here's a guy that runs a company that's got 50,000 employees and a remarkable leader, very busy man, but yet just a 1-hour lunch that we shared some sensitive information about how hard it is to be on the road raising a family. And yet 2 months later, when I'm down in El Salvador at one of his call centers, he took the time to reach out and have my back and book me on this other flight. Now you might think that that's, what's that have to do with being in an accounting business? What's that have to do with growing my business? But I share that story because it often is the little things that we do. When you meet people, to really write down notes about what's important to those people and where they went to school and what their family does, what their daughter's hobbies are. When you meet people, it's amazing how much information people share with you. And we're just programmed to always think transactionally about how I can help provide a service to them. But I think when you meet people, the most important thing to do is really learn about personal information that's meaningful to them. We all have business cards, and you probably collect business cards from clients, and most people think that the front of the business card is the most important thing. It has your profession, your name, your title, your position, your phone number, and so forth. But the back of the business card, in my opinion, is the most important thing. And the back of the business card is usually blank. And that's when you take notes. What's this person's wife's names, husband's names, kids' names, where they go to school, their alma mater, their passions, their interests, their hobbies. They share so much information. They might tell you, it's my 30th wedding anniversary. We're going on a cruise to the Baltic Sea on August 4th. Well, most people say, oh, that's nice. But what I do is I write in my notes, August 4th, anniversary trip to the Baltic Sea. And so I'll go to a bookstore and I'll pick up a travel guide to the Baltic Sea, and I'll send a little note. Hey, I know you're going on your anniversary trip this summer. Here's a little token of my appreciation of meeting you, and a book on your honeymoon. And then I'll put a little note on August 3rd, which is the day before their trip, on my calendar, and I'll send them a little email saying, hey, I know you and your wife are heading on your trip tomorrow. I'll be thinking about you. I mean, who does that? I mean, it's the little things that we do in our business to move beyond the transaction of our business. And if you build this type of relationships, I call this whole phenomenon ROR. It's called return on relationships. We're so focused on building ROI, which is return on investment. How do you build your business? By really looking at building the relationships in your business, the relationships with your clients, and how to move beyond the transaction and build more real, authentic, genuine relationships, and not just what I call the Dale Carnegie's manipulative relationships where you're just networking for personal growth, but how you can, what I call net giving, not what networking. Networking is what you do when you want to build your business to help yourself. When you network, you meet people to help yourself. Net giving is when you meet people and you have an interest in helping them. I mean, the greatest business leaders, whether you're an accountant or a teacher or a doctor or a lawyer, whatever profession you're in, but the greatest leaders are the ones that look at their clients in a way they can truly help and serve them beyond what you can provide. If you're an accountant, you're a trusted business advisor. If someone's giving you their business and their financials and their accounting needs, they probably have a great trust in you. The more you get to know them, then you can build a relationship to help serve them and their family and their employees and the people that are important to them beyond the transaction of this basic accounting. And I call this whole phenomenon return on relationships. And if you build a business with these return on relationships, you'll move beyond the transaction and a deeper, meaningful relationship. I want to share one last story before we go into Q&A. As I bank at a bank in Colorado called Vector Bank, and I banked here since I moved to Colorado 12 years ago. And a good friend of mine is the president of that bank. And a few years ago, my book came out, and I was on a 200-city book tour trying to promote the book, and I got a call from my wife on the road, and she said, you got to be home this weekend because your daughter's turning 5 years old on Saturday, and we're having a cowgirl party at the house. And so I said, sure, I'll be home. Of course, I want to attend my daughter's birthday party and help around the house. So I get home on a Thursday, and I go to Vector Bank to make a bank deposit before I went home. And I'm online about 4:45 p.m. and get online and finally get to the bank teller and put my BlackBerry down to sign over the check to make a deposit. And I didn't know this lady, and she looked at me, and we had this small talk, first floor relationship, and then we start moving to a second floor kind of small talk. And then I share with her that my daughter is turning 5 years old on Saturday, and we're having a cowgirl party for her. And I told her, the bank teller, that my daughter's never ridden a horse. She's never, really seen a horse before, but she's obsessed with horses. Her name is Caroline. She's turning 5 years old on Saturday, and we're having a cowgirl party for her because she loves horses. So we just kind of do small talk a little bit, and then I get my deposit slip and I go home. Well, the next day I wake up, and sure enough, I get an email from this woman named Lindsay Burr, and I'm talking to her, reading this email, and she says, my name is Lindsay Burr. I'm the bank teller that you met at the Vector Bank branch yesterday when you came in at 4:45 to make a deposit. And I didn't get a chance to tell you this, but I grew up in Colorado, and I own horses and love horses, and I have a wonderful idea for a surprise for your daughter on her 5th birthday on Saturday. And you told me that she loves horses and she'd never ridden a horse before, but you're having a cowgirl party on Saturday morning. But wouldn't it be a great surprise for your daughter that after the birthday party that you could actually take her horseback riding and take your daughter to ride a horse for her very first time on her 5th birthday? So she writes in this email, she took the liberty to do some research, and she sent me information about some horse stables in my area, and that here's a 3 o'clock lesson on Saturday. Wouldn't it be a great surprise for your daughter if she wants to ride, this horse on her 5th birthday? I was so impressed that my bank teller, which is usually a very transactional relationship, reached out to me, and she sent me this information to send my daughter on this, horse riding thing on Saturday after her birthday party. I was so impressed. I took my daughter on this 3 o'clock riding lesson, and she wound up falling in love with horses, and she wound up riding horses for the next 4 years, and now she's 8 years old and just loves horseback riding and loves horses. And I never grew up in horses and never really ridden horses before, and I never would have tapped into that if it wasn't for my bank teller that really saw a passion of mine, which is my family, and recommended something that really changed my daughter's life, because horses are a huge part of who she is now. And I share that because banking is a transactional business. It could be, like when you go to make a deposit. Yet my bank teller found a way to move beyond the transaction and how to serve a customer or client and serve them in the capacity of something that's even outside the realm of banking. In this case, getting horseback riding lessons. And I share that because I want you to really think about every person on this call, list 15, 20 clients that you have, or maybe it's just 10 clients, people you've worked with, people you're currently working with, your top 10, 15, 20 clients, the people that they're bringing the most of the revenue in your business, and write their names down. We literally do what I call a relationship audit. Write down the names of the most important people in your business, of your clients and customers, and write their names down. And then go through each name and ask yourself, what level of relationship do I have with them? First floor, second floor, third floor, fourth floor? Do I have a penthouse, fifth floor relationship with? How well do I know my customers' names? Do I know their wife's names, their husband's name, their kids' names, their family, their passions, their interests, their alma mater, their hobbies, their challenges? How can I get to know them? And how well do I know them? And if you want to change your business, you have to move beyond just providing a great service. You have to move and build your relationship. And if you build these types of relationships, they'll totally transform your business. And you need to move beyond the networking and move beyond the Dale Carnegie's how to win friends and manipulate people. You got to build genuine, real, meaningful, vulnerable relationships. And if you can build them with your clients, they'll totally transform your business. Jessica, it's time to, I'm going to answer some questions now, but I appreciate the opportunity to share the synopsis of my book.
Thank you, Tommy. That was great. I'm going to encourage everybody, if you have any questions for Tommy on how to move to the fifth floor, any other examples that he may have, go ahead and ask them now. We are going to go through 2 additional poll questions before we move to Q&A. Let me go ahead and get this launched here. Our next poll question is, how many fifth floor relationships would you say that you currently have? None, 1 to 2, 3 to 10, or 10 or more? And I'm going to go ahead and give everybody just a minute to go ahead and vote on this. Okay, just about everyone's voted. I'm going to go ahead and give you about 10 more seconds here. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close this poll. Here you can see that about 5% of our audience said 0, 20% said 1 to 2, half of the audience said 3 to 10, and 25% of the audience said 10 plus. Okay, and Tommy, if you want to go ahead and go to the next slide for me, please. Just some Profit Sense resources. So we do have an infographic that does discuss how to transform relationships in your accounting firm. You will be receiving an email from me that will also include a white paper on the same topic. We encourage you to join our LinkedIn group that is for business advisory professionals. And we also have other resources for additional white papers and infographics on other topics. Tommy, if you want to go ahead and move to the next. And this is going to be contact info for Tommy. So Debbie is Tommy's business development manager. So if you have any questions or if you have any interest in Tommy coming and speaking at any of your firm events, please contact Debbie. Tommy will have a new book coming out in 2015 called The Who Principle. It will be published by Random House. And if you have any other questions or if you want to watch some other videos of Tommy speaking, you can go to his website at tommyspaulding.com. All right, we have one last poll question before we move into our Q&A. I would like to see if anybody would be interested in learning how Profit Sense can help you with transforming your client relationships and adding value within your firm. And I will go ahead and give everyone just a minute to go ahead and vote on this. Okay, we still have some responses coming in, so I'll give it just a few more seconds here. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close this poll. Okay, and let's go ahead and open it up for Q&A. Tommy, are you ready?
I am ready.
All right, so one of the first questions that we have are, what are some specific actions I can take in a relationship to move to the next level? They didn't specify which level, but maybe you could talk about a little bit between like 1 and 2, 2 and 3, and so on.
Sure. First of all, when people read my book or hear my conferences and they say, well, I'm not an extrovert. I don't meet people like you. I don't have this outgoing personality, and I wish you all could meet my wife because she's an introvert and very shy, and she likes to have more one-on-one conversations. She doesn't walk into a room and meet 50 people like I do. And so these types of relationships can be built by introverts, extroverts, any types of people. And I think the answer to that question is the next time you're taking a client out to lunch or meeting at their office or your office and you're doing work, you maybe just ask a little bit, hey, we've been working together for a while. Tell me more about it. So where'd you go to school? Or what are your hobbies? Or where'd you go on vacation? And you just kind of start asking questions a little bit and really start to really listening. And then maybe share a little bit more about yourself. I think that's the best way to move relationships beyond. I was just in Boston just a few weeks ago, and I was meeting with a guy that runs this company called McGladrey, which is a pretty large accounting firm in Boston, and he's the managing partner there. And we had a great dinner together. We actually took me to the Boston Bruins game, and we had a great dinner and great conversation, and I guess it was great small talk, and at first, and we talked different things, and his name was Chris McKenzie. He's the managing partner at McGladrey Boston, and I met with two of his other associates. We had this wonderful dinner, and we talked a little bit about families and so forth. But the interesting part is when we walked back to our hotel, and I probably walked maybe a quarter mile with Chris, and it was late at night, and we had this wonderful dinner. We started really having a great conversation about family, and he was sharing about losing someone to cancer, and I was talking about my young kids, and I was telling Chris about my 5-year-old son, now 6-year-old son, Tate, who just turned 6 this past month, and he's obsessed with hockey. And I was telling Chris that how much my son loves hockey, and I just going on and on. That wakes up and all he talks about is hockey, and he's got hockey pucks, he skates, and he's just this incredible, passionate kid that loves hockey. Well, this is an absolute true story, and it really moved me. But just a couple weeks ago, when my son turned 6 years old, I get a package in the mail, and it's from this guy, Chris, this managing director of McGladrey, Chris McKenzie, who I've only met once for dinner. And he mails a package to my son, Tate. And so I open it up, and it's a signed puck by Bobby Orr, who next to Wayne Gretzky is the greatest hockey player ever. And he said that his father got this puck to him over 30 years ago, and that he had this puck for the last almost 35 years, and that he's always wanted to find pass the puck to the next generation. And then he said in his letter to Tate that he heard that he loves hockey, and from his father that told him all about how that Tate loves hockey, and that he wanted to give him this puck. And he sent Tate a signed puck of Bobby Orr. I was just blown away. I couldn't believe this guy remembered this conversation walking out of the restaurant about my son, but then let go of such a prized possession. I'm not even sure what that puck is worth. Bobby Orr is a legend, but he gave that to my son. And here I'm talking about it. I'm writing about it in my next book. It's the little things that we do. I will never forget Chris McKenzie. And if he ever called me up, and he's an accountant, this is your blood, but he found a way to connect with me at an emotional level. My son is like, he sleeps with that puck. I mean, I wake up in the morning, and I get out of bed, and he's sleeping with this Bobby Orr puck. He loves it because Chris just said, I'm going to take a chance and do something meaningful. And these are the little things that you can do to build relationships. You might not have a Bobby Orr puck to give away, but if you think about it and you really listen to people, what they tell you, how could you serve them and do things that are abnormal and move away than just the traditional thank you cards, birthday cards, Christmas cards, holiday cards. Everyone does that. How can you move your relationships beyond the transaction of those things and do special things like Chris McKenzie?
Great, thank you. The next question is, not everyone is a good fifth floor candidate. How would you handle people that want to be a fifth floor but that the accountant would not?
Well, I think you need to be very selective in who you build fifth floor relationships with. And you did a poll before, and I was really proud because 50% of the people said that they have 5 to 10 fifth floor relationships. And that's exactly right. I mean, there's some people that said they had 20, 30, 40, and if you have that many, then you're very blessed. But it's impossible to build deep, meaningful relationships with more than 20, 30 people. It's just exhausting. And so not all your relationships will be the fifth floor. Now, there's some people that might want to build a fifth floor relationship with you that you don't want to be. And so you don't have to be fifth floor relationships with everybody. Be very selective. Pick the people that you really want to invest your time in, the ones that you feel are authentic and real and genuine relationships and not forced and manipulative. And when you focus on the quality, but you focus on the quantity of relationships, that's when you'll see your business grow. And you'll be a lot happier personally. The handful of relationships you have are real and meaningful.
Okay, great. The next question says that I work in a large firm. Should everybody in my firm be trying to take our clients to the fifth floor or for a fifth floor relationship, or should we start with specific members of our firm to do this?
No, that's a great question. I think every single person in the firm needs to be an ambassador of building authentic relationships. And if you only have an outsourced few people that are finding relationships, that's not how you build a great culture of an organization. You have to empower every member, whether you're a new accountant, or CPA, or senior partner, or what have you. It is that each one of you find a way to invest yourself in the community, to build a handful of relationships. If you can build 10 relationships with clients that are deep and meaningful, and you have 500, members of your firm, then you're touching hundreds of people in the community. And so each and every person has to find ways to give back to the community, to be engaged in the community, and to build deep, meaningful relationships with a handful of your clients.
Okay, great. Next question is regarding the theme of your new book. They were asking what is going to be the theme of your new book and how it can help them.
Well, the first book I wrote was called It's Not Just Who You Know. And really, it's not, that came from, it's not what you know, it's who you know. It's always who you know in life. And I agree with who you know is important, but it's not just who you know. It's really how you know them. And that is really the essence of my first book. It's building relationships is really building real, meaningful, deep, vulnerable, authentic, genuine relationships. And that's really the essence of my first book. But it's not just who you know. It's not just building these relationships that's important. And so the essence of my second book is really the sequel to that. It's not who you know. It's really who you are, and who you are is so important. And the who is so much more important than the what. And we live in such a what society. From the second we go to school, what's your GPA, what college you're going to, what job you have, what are your grades, what's your salary, what job you work for, where do you live. We live in such a what society, and I think focusing on the who is so important, and the values of the who, your character, your integrity, your vulnerability, your humility, your heart. And so the book I'm writing, called The Who Principle, really talks about the most important thing, the building relationships and growing your business is focusing on yourself and the who that you are. And you have these traits that I talk about in the book of authenticity and humility and love and service to others. And the who you are, really drives the what of your business. And that's kind of the essence of the next book.
Okay, great. As an accountant, how much should you share, and what is too much information?
Well, I'm not recommending that all of you should hang up from this conference call and call up your clients and tell them about the affair that you're having, or something that you're doing that's deep personal, a divorce, or your kids got a drug problem, or what. We all have our challenges and issues in our lives. I'm not saying that you should go out and share that all, but I am sharing that there's this sweet space of not just talking about transactional small talk, but not sharing deep, meaningful family secrets. There's a place where you can start sharing some information that's a little bit more vulnerable. Because what I've learned in building relationships is that vulnerability is contagious. And then if you move a relationship and you have strict just business and small talk, you never share vulnerability, you don't get deep, you don't share, you don't have a closeness. But if you just share a little bit, like when I was walking outside the restaurant with Chris McKenzie, and we had a very productive business dinner, but we were walking out, I was telling a little about my family. And I've shared a couple times on the phone call today that my biggest challenge in my life is becoming a great dad and a great husband, but traveling to 20 cities a month on the speaking circuit. And it's hard not being home with your young kids. And I was sharing with him how hard that was. And then when I opened up a little bit, he started sharing things that I won't share on the conference call because it was confidential, but sharing things that were more personal to him. And so vulnerability gives permission for the other person to be vulnerable a little bit. So I would start with smaller things that you can open up with, and then maybe move beyond more deeper things as your friendship grows. But no, I don't expect you to share all your your intimate personal feelings with just everyone. You got to be very selective who you do.
Okay, thank you, Tommy. And just a comment from one of our audience members today. It says that his IT guy recommended your book to him several years ago, and that the two of them moved to a piss-poor relationship very quickly. And not only did it transform their relationship, it created a personal board of directors between both of them, and it transformed how they do business, and that they get really good quality referrals. And so I just wanted to share that with you. So right there just shows how one of the great things that your book has done for them.
Yeah, whoever that was, Jessica, I want you to know how much that means to me when I hear that, because that's why I wrote the book, was to really inspire people to really evaluate their relationships, and not just your business relationships, but your personal relationships too. And if we had another hour on the call, I would love to share more of how my personal life has just been totally transformed by how I look at my friends and my family and my wife and my kids and just my neighbors. It's a remarkable thing. So I thank you for sharing that, and I'm glad that you built a great relationship with one of your coworkers.
Okay, great. Well, Tommy, thank you so much again. I know that this was your very first webinar, and so we really appreciate you coming on. It was a great message, and I think that a lot of our audience members will be able to take that into busy season and really transform their relationships, and hopefully they'll be able to go ahead and create more engagements in the future. So we are going to go ahead and conclude today's webinar. If you did answer yes to learning more about Profit Sense, we will go ahead and follow up with you shortly. Thank you, everybody.